All right, the rock, paper, scissors, spot gang is back together again for our weekly bot roundup chat. Scott Walter, Gustav Andersson, Mehrdad Farimani. Scott is a mechanical aerospace engineer amongst us, a two-time founder of robotics companies, and has taken an interesting turn in his career. We'll get to know more about that shortly. Gustav is a hand surgeon and associate professor of anatomy in northern Sweden, and Mehrdad, of course, is based in Sweden. He also been designing humanoids and other service robots for over a decade, and he advises startups and investors on the robot product roadmap. So he's the guy you want to get in touch with. So much has happened since we last met, gentlemen. Mehrdad, you were in Japan for the Humanoid Summit. Scott, of course, that eventful career change, and we've got tons of robots to talk about. So let's start it off with your trip to Japan, Mehrdad, and tell us everything.
Of course. No, it was great to be there. Well, initially I was there for Humanoid Summit Tokyo. Yeah. And as you know, this is the fourth Humanoid Summit, and was very, very interesting actually, because one of the main sponsors of the event was GMO, which is one of these major companies in Japan. So they had a lot to say basically, and they had a lot to showcase. One thing that I didn't see almost at all was a Japanese humanoid. I mean, they were around, but they were not at the summit. And we had a lot of Chinese suppliers basically exhibiting.
What do you mean they were around, but they were not at the summit?
Okay, there are details into that. I'm not sure if I should say. Yeah. Because I met a few companies actually in Japan who were building humanoids, but they were not at the summit for some of them political reasons, some of them other reasons. And also,
interesting.
It was, yeah, we can talk about it in the back room. And then, I think that the show started mostly with Field AI. Ali Aga is as one of the main speakers, and then James from Sanctuary AI, those two, and then RL World. You probably heard of it with the hand from Alex, the robot. I forgot the name of the company. We Robotics or something.
We Robotics. I saw the same hand in Boston the week before, so I know which one you're talking about.
I mean, they were great actually. What they were talking about dexterity, but in short, what I could understand, like in most of the other human-related summits on the software side, everybody are saying, "Oh, we need a bunch of data. We don't have those data. We need to just collect more data." So that was like kind of the summary of the software side. And on the hardware side, everybody are focused on the hand and dexterity, and everybody are saying dexterity is hard. So that was kind of everything in a nutshell. And a lot of people were repeating the same. But one of the main things, okay, two things before we get to the hand one. I wanted to talk about this cultural aspects where, to be honest, my perception of Japan was always a country with so much tech and a lot of things happening around, which was the case. But at the same time, there's this old saying, or not so old, but saying that in 1980, Japan was like the year 2000. And in the year 2025, Japan is still like year 2000s, right? So we kind of could feel that they stuck in time at some point. And when I was talking to some people, one of the common narratives was that, oh, Japan has been great at hardware, still is. But when the software started, Japan couldn't really keep up with that. So that is one of the reasons that we see Japan is not so much on the AI side. And all of
quite
those.
The contrast with China, really, because if you look at even a place like Shenzhen, it is, I mean, you have humanoids at roadside cafes. You've got humanoids. If you order something home to your apartment, the delivery guy will just drop it into a humanoid that then rolls into the elevator and comes to your floor and pings you when it's there. It's just every aspect of life you see automation.
100%. And that's very true. And I think that happened in China over the past, let's say, 10 to 15 years. And before that, it was really not the case. But we know that Japan has a history of, since 1970, in Waseda University, they made their first human robot, right? And they were actually that one showcasing at the university. But one of the things that stuck with me was the cultural aspect, in a sense that there were a few robots actually inside the shopping malls or inside some stores, and maybe some of them in the streets. And it was very, very common for people to see them. nobody was surprised or taking a photo or clapping for them or anything. So it seems like the culture had got used to robotics, as opposed to Western cultures that here for us, robot is still something new to be performing in human environments. And that was something very interesting for me that I was thinking, yeah, one thing we can import from Japan is probably the culture of accepting robots. That's one thing, but one of the main things was that we saw that Honda was exhibiting their new hand, and this was one of the most phenomenal hands that I ever tried it myself with the teleoperation. And the team was basically a great robotic team from Honda R&D, and the head of the team was involved in Osimo also back in that time. I would really like to have him on podcast one day.
Yeah, you should get him on. Love to have him.
Shy, but I have his contact, can pass it over. But the main thing about this hand is that each finger can lift up to, I think there are videos also on their website, that each finger can lift up to 50 newtons and at the same time give an exceptional accuracy. For example, there's a video of the hand threading a needle, which is something that we don't really see so much.
Actually threading the needle, not the arm threading the needle with a static hand, but actually threading the needle. Okay.
Exactly. And it was very, very, very impressive. Not only for me, everybody were saying, oh, this hand was something great. And also one thing that we see here is that as opposed to very bionic type of hands, this was still on the industrial side, especially with not having all the fingers and being slightly more chubby. But we could see that, it can give a great success. When I asked them about the application,
that's a pretty big sensor pad on the palm.
That is true. Yeah. Overall, it was like thickness was also a bit chubby, but we could see that. And the fact that there are only 3 fingers, right? But it's the size of a full hand. So
So is it effective? And then what you've experienced the hand, you've interacted with it. So give us your feedback of whether you thought 3 fingers, 4 fingers, really, 3 and a thumb. 3 and a thumb.
That's
interesting. Is that sufficient? Or before we get to the good doctor?
So the case that the visitors could try was basically teleoperating the hand to be able to turn a small bolt, and it was an extremely small bolt, M1 bolt, which is very, very, very small. So I could easily do that by teleoperation, but only 2 fingers. So what I tested was 2 fingers. So I don't know if there wasn't really any clear case that you could use all 4 fingers or 5 fingers. I think, this is on the right side is threading a needle case, and it was doing it pretty successfully, to be honest.
And this was autonomous, not teleoperated when it was threading the needle.
These cases were autonomous, but this is the same bolt that you could teleoperate it also.
So did you have force feedback as well, or was it just the pure movement that you did?
Pure movement. There wasn't.
So you didn't feel when you gripped the.
You couldn't, but it's interesting actually, because I even tried to push it a bit harder, and I saw that the hand itself stops at some point, so it doesn't press the bolt so much more than that. Mm-hmm. As you can see here,
now was it already pre-started when you put the nut on the bolt, or was it able to do that itself?
The nut was already kind of inside the bolt. But there was a case that you could take it out and then put it back again.
Take it off, because I'm trying to think. Kyber is probably the only hand we've seen actually started as well.
That's right.
Exactly.
On there. Yes.
But that was relatively still
spinning it is actually pretty easy compared to getting it started.
True.
Yeah.
Well, again, both accuracy and power, which like 15 Newton is a good amount number to be able to lift something.
And what's nice is when they look in the specs, they also say what the hold time is. So hopefully now everyone will be doing the same thing, not just say, oh yeah, we can do 50 Newtons for 1 second.
Yeah.
That was like 150 seconds that can actually do this. It's like, okay, that's a reasonable amount of time. That's what, 2.5 minutes?
And was that like an
more than enough to do something? Yeah.
Was that an in fingertip camera Did they have cameras inside?
Oh, a good question. So the sensors are actually optic sensors.
On the right.
Yes.
They're optic sensors. So there are a lot of threads of optic that goes to a camera somewhere else. That's kind of a new approach to tactile sensing.
Yeah.
Sharpa optic sensors. How? Okay, explain how that works.
So optic sensors basically that you put a lot of. Imagine you have this fiber optic threads that are like very small, the size of a hair, and you stack them on beside each other to create like a space on the fingertip, and then all of those stack of threads, they go into maybe on the wrist or forearm, and there's a camera there, so it takes all the light that comes out of those optic threads into that camera.
A little bit different. It's like I think the camera is actually literally out there at the end of the tip, and they're seeing the reflection of the material and from that processing it. So two approaches. One which is more like you say, the fiber optic threads that you bring around over to the the bigger camera that can do the processing.
Exactly.
It's kind of ironic that everyone keeps on complaining about, putting cameras on there. Why can't you have touch sensing? And a lot of touch sensing actually uses the camera. So
totally. Which is very interesting because it gives you also, here's the finger, like one finger, 15 Newton, and this was also what they were showcasing. And
okay, most people do not know what 50 Newtons is. It's like, that's a number I'm not used to seeing every day. Divide it by 10, because that's a gravitational constant, and you get 5 kilograms. So basically it means it's lifting 5 kilograms, and that would be 11 pounds in freedom units.
Just fairly good number, I would say.
I mean, the thumb.
I mean, for one hand, that was one finger.
Yeah,
one finger only. Yeah.
Oh, and then multiply that by 3, then potentially that means you can easily grab a bag, luggage bag at that point.
So it does two things here, or at least one thing that I like. It's the one in-hand manipulation. I think that's something that I'm hoping to see more of, because that's what we do a lot when we just holding the phone. I got it in the wrong position. I need to move it around, and I don't want to have to bring my other hand over to turn it to get it into a better grip. I want to be able to do it within the hand. So this in-hand manipulation, I think, is something I expect us to see that more and more, and also the whole. We saw the thumb was not perhaps as mobile as we are hoping to see in upcoming hands, but I mean, for a lot of the manipulations it works, and I'm not sure that's a big adaptation, a complex change that they need to do. I mean, when they have the rest of the setup, they could probably rotate it a little bit more. I don't know, but I would hope it would go a little bit further toward its third finger, its ring finger. Do you call it a little finger if you only have 3 fingers?
Good question. Very good question.
Pinky or ring finger?
Are the 3 fingers the same size? Are they the same essentially? So, I mean, are they interchangeable?
Good question. Maybe they were.
Get on the homepage at least.
Offset.
Yeah.
Now, Gustav, what's the minimum
probably they're
number
offset exactly the same.
Yeah. What's the minimum number of digits you need for in-hand manipulation? Would it just be 3?
I mean, you could probably do it with your thumb and 2 fingers, but
that's
why
I said digits. Okay, you notice I'm being very careful here.
Yeah, I mean, we could probably move it around quite a lot like this. I mean, when you hold a pen or your whatever, you can manipulate it with just 3 fingers.
Even doing this, it's easier to do with 3. Yeah, you can do
2
it
fingers.
with 2. You can do it with 3. 4, you don't really need.
I mean,
Rubik's Cube, can you do with 3?
Yeah. I mean, the more the merrier, but this if you're gonna cut down, I think you should stop at having 3 fingers and a thumb. I mean, if you go further down the line and only have 2 and 1, like some.
So how important is the pinky finger?
I mean, for us, it's primarily this widening of the grip and adding stability and some in-hand manipulation of certain objects to give it a better fit. But I mean, losing 1 finger is not a big deal, actually.
So if you had to lose, not good, but to lose a finger, it would be the pinky.
No, I'd say for humans, it would be remove the index finger. It's easier to get accustomed to using your middle finger. So when we replant things, this is pre.
Why is that? Is that because they both are they Is it because of
both are
strength
median
and
nerve
capability?
innervated, and
Well-
we are like, there are a lot of, at least that's what people keep saying. I don't know if it's actually the truth, but the leading edge of the index finger and the middle finger has a lot of nerve endings going to them, and a lot of our sensation is based on those things. Whereas so if you lose this one, you still have a lot of median nerve innervations going into the middle finger, and we're all very quickly to adapt with that because it's in a nice position. Whereas the little finger, you kind of lose stability to the grip, and you lose contact with the table and so on. So I think we usually say that the thumb is the most important, and then you try to keep the long along the ring, and then the pinky. Whereas this one, you can basically.
So since we're on the topic of Japan, which finger do the Yakuza decide to have removed?
Oh, really? Do they have?
Depends
You've
on how
said
naughty
this
you've
before, I
been.
think.
Probably Gustav has been a consultant to
Yeah.
Yakuza.
I mean, think about it. There may have actually been logic to which finger they pick. But I think usually isn't the pinky,
Yeah.
which is always the wrong one that you see in the movies when they have to do that. So
Maybe that's where they start.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where they start. Yeah, yeah. No, so the reason I ask you that, Gustav, is because Mehrdad and Gustav, both of you gentlemen, and Scott, of course, looking at this hand, the fact that you've got three similar fingers that are interchangeable, you don't have the human differentiation between the neurons between the fingers. So you could literally have the equivalent of 3 index fingers in a robot, which changes things, right?
Yeah, it's probably, and I mean, you could design around the issue of them being the same length, whereas we are kind of shaped in a way. So we prefer to have the pinky in that size compared to the others, because that's how the rest of our hand is kind of designed. Whereas if you have 3 equal length fingers, I mean, if you look at your index, long, and ring finger, they are quite similar in size. It's just that this one is positioned slightly further out, so it's not a big difference. So, but as I said, you miss your pinky when it's gone. I think so.
Well, it turns out the answer is it's always the top of the pinky.
That's the top of the pinky. That
So
they
it may not be
get.
thinking it all the way through.
And one thing I can also say that many people, including myself, were trying to ask them, what is the drive system?
Mm-hmm.
Is it tendon drive? Is it linkage? Is it? And they said that part is confidential.
Oh, you
So
couldn't tell by
nobody
looking at it?
basically knows what the drive is. It was extremely hard to look into it. I tried to take some detailed photos also, but we see the linkages in the
Yeah.
ends, but we
It
don't
looks
know
like I
what.
see some linkages.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's a hybrid, some for abduction. It looked like
And it was
there something I
extremely
couldn't
back
tell.
drivable.
Mm-hmm.
It is okay.
Extremely back drivable, like as if it was tendon drive. But they said specifically it's not tendon drive.
Mm.
So I'm wondering how did they gain the back drivability with just solid linkages?
Yeah. Could we look at the other Asian hand, the Wuji ×2? Do you have that up, Royden?
Yeah.
We
Let me
got
just,
you look at that.
Any final thoughts on the Humanoid Summit before I bring this up quickly?
I think before Gustav leaves, we should bring the hand, and then I'll talk about that later.
Okay.
Okay, so here we go.
Anyway, whoever the organizers are of that summit, they should be complimented.
True.
Well, next time, Mehrdad, I'll be joining you there for sure.
100%.
Yeah. All right, so here we go. Wuji Tech, yield over strength, stand over time. Wuji hand 2, fully upgraded dexterous hand, redefining precision manipulation for embodied intelligence. Dum dum dum.
Transparency. Wuji.
Oops. Yeah. Here we go.
So it looks CGI, but they have
That's
the
what I was
hand.
wondering.
Yeah.
So why do they need to do a CG demo when they have nice functioning hands out there? Well, never mind. So they have your worm gear.
With
Watchmakers.
lubricant. So I speculated that they may have moved away from a worm gear to a bevel because everything seems to be kind of lined up there.
Mhm.
But that that's a special type of worm gear. It's a little bit different. It almost looked like a grinding wheel or a cutter. When you're looking at it, I thought, oh, are they showing the actual machining process there? Because we were seeing kind of chips being produced. There are,
this
worm
is
gear usually
bad.
are not back drivable. And it's there that we can see that, that shaft, the way it's coming out, it's not a bevel. It definitely is a worm gear. So it's rather interesting that they were able to not have that offset like we saw from the first one. So I thought they may have moved, but at least I was right in my initial guess the first hand that it was a worm drive. You'll see that they changed the knuckles a little bit cleaner. Still the same idea that flexion first, then abduction, and then flexion for the rest of it. So they kept the same sort of order of operation, but they no longer have that 4-bar linkage. And I think it's because they came up with a better style reducer that's allowed them to be able to put it together. So the first design was already beautiful.
Yeah.
And the second generation, like, they've definitely refined it quite a bit.
So was the first one back drivable? It wasn't, right?
They said it was back drivable, but it was really more back drivable from software. But now it sounds like they're saying it's actually back drivable mechanically.
Yeah, because we saw a clip someone posted of them being allowed to kind of bend it all over the place at this.
And that can easily be done with software, because they I guess they have enough torque transparency that they can kind of do it. But the thing I'm a bit confused is, like, you could see, okay, there's the worm drive and there's a gear and another gear and another. I'm like, wait a minute, what are all these gears going on? Suddenly they get planets there. And I was like, is this like a worm drive and a planet? So it may have been that they've come up with some really odd kind of mechanism in there to be able to pull it out. Or they're just trying to confuse us with all the gears circulating around.
Artistic design, like artistic representation.
We know what Sharpa came out with one that clearly artistic licenses in there, and that, you know, they were trolling everyone because it looked like a Swiss watch, and a lot of people were like,
exactly,
the detail, and it's like, it is clearly CGI. They asked AI to imagine what would be on the inside. So they're not that complex, but we don't really know what's going on there, unless that's an accurate rendering of what's happening.
Just a side note here, creating a CGI of such a video is much cheaper and easier than create a real video of this.
Oh yeah.
That's my assumption why they went with this.
Especially nowadays. I mean, you don't need to have that much expertise to be able to
exactly
do the video.
So Royden, do you have the X post of it being shown in real life? I put it in the chat if you want to bring it up, because they're kind of messing around with it at ICRA, whatever that is.
And I think one point they made in there about the sim to real being closer. You know, Sharpa makes kind of the same point, that because they're all direct driven, the sim to real gap almost disappears.
So I commented on the guy in the cat because he's really bending the thumb backwards to kind of take it through its range of motion. So it still has the opposition. But you can really see that it's been teleoperated. It's been like, because the operator is moving the third finger, then the fourth will follow along, because it's a human doing the movement. So you can't bend one finger at a time. Yeah. But it is like a pre-programmed run. But now it kind of bends.
Thanks for the tip.
That's the tell. Okay, the next time, that's the tell. Yeah.
Also, I'm still disappointed not seeing a wrist. Or is it? No.
Yeah, there is no wrist, so you have to provide it. I think Sharpa provides the wrist, because they provide the whole arm now. But I think they also supply just the hand, so it's up to you to supply the wrist. What I didn't know is, like, the Honda hand had a wrist, but he couldn't tell what it was either.
No, it had, and it was, just 2 degrees. Pretty good.
Just 2, okay.
Because whenever it's a tendon drive, then the wrist is question.
Yeah.
We still need to see some of those.
But it really pushes the thumb back into the retropulsion, which I like. It doesn't show that the hand can do it itself, but a lot of the bots kind of stay at this 30-40 degree angle. I would like it to at least go to the flat, but if you can like over stretch it towards the back, is a good function to have. At least patients who lose that complain.
The irony is they have a lot of hyperextension on all of the joints. They go back a bit further, which everyone noticed. They basically have like Tom Jang hand there. Maybe they've been following him too much.
Maybe he
what,
was
what
the
do you
one.
call the thumb? That you call it retropulsion going back?
Yeah, so when the thumb goes away from this position, the whatever my words
When
are,
it's
but
flat.
retropulsion, or so it's not just to the flat, but it actually lifts up from the table. If you keep the thumb on the table, you can lift it up from the table. So
Retropulsion. So that means when we're getting ready for a re-entry.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, what they don't really show is it making a full fist. Like we talked about that before, us being able to close the gap so that we can have really thin objects.
Actually, the Wii hand that I saw when I was in Boston, that's one of the things I noticed, is that when they did this, it closed right up. I complimented them on that. I said, very good. No one else can do that. So no daylight going through there when they closed it. I don't know if you had a chance to look at that also, Mehrdad.
Is it, Scott, the compliant panels, like the silicone paddings that push towards each other, or?
I mean, they had some on there, but when the hand closed, it was definitely like that. And it was, I think, did they call it the Dex hand, or is it the Wuji, the Wii hand from Alex? Because I think the robot is Alex, right?
And robot is Alex, exactly.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if they gave the hand a special name.
Okay. Well, sorry guys, I have to go. Judy calls.
It was great to have you
again, perhaps.
Thank you so much. Yes, it's good to have you, all of you gents, back together, and thank you. We'll see you soon, Gustav.
See you guys.
Thank you.
All right, and then there were three. Now, we have something interesting that the gentleman in the middle of your screens is giving us a little bit of a sneak peek about. He's been up to a lot. Scott, you want to tell us what's going on in life with your career, what you've been up to, some massive changes, and there you are.
Okay, there I am. You can show a little bit more of the poster where I am. So if you look around here, you may notice this is not my normal studio. This is my, well, I kind of call it our expensive storage container right now. So I spend more time in Florida than I do in our Michigan residence. And just down the road from me is Monroe and Associates. And I retired from Visual Components in January to join RoboStrategy. And so I am pretty much looking at startups and helping our investment committee make decisions on robotic startups, let's say anything in the physical intelligence space. And as you may have seen this past week, we started to do a bit of a podcast tour. Our founder and CEO, Andrew Kang, has been out there talking quite a bit about RoboStrategy, and that we are listed on NASDAQ under the symbol BOT, BOT. And we're kind of proud to say, as you know, Friday was the NASDAQ loss, was the biggest point loss in its history.
And you guys were up?
We were one of the few green ones, and we were like over 10% up. So we're kind of happy about that, because the idea is to give the public access to the private markets, which it's kind of an exclusive club to be able to get in there. And it's just like opening up for more and more people to be able to do that.
So was the market rotating into bot?
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, you can come up with all sorts of theories on why it was down. One could be everyone needed to fund their account for the SpaceX.
For the SpaceX.
IPO. So who knows? It could have been that. So there could be a variety of reasons. But and so I get to go to a lot of summits now, like Humanoid Summits, the Robotics Summit in Boston, and others that will be coming up. Get to visit a lot of interesting companies that you may have noticed from some of the posts. And last week, since I was coming out here anyways for the summer meetup in Muskegon with the which is the Tesla owners of Michigan, they put that on annually. And fortunately, the weather cooperated. We had a great light show. You can kind of look at that, where Simon created a light show that actually created outline of an eagle. You couldn't tell from the ground, but up in the sky you could. So since I was out, I stopped by Monroe and Associates, and they were able to get their hands on a Unitree G1, and have done what Monroe does, is a breakdown, right? So they did a teardown, and they've already released, I think, a 6-minute video showing the Unitree when it was still in piece, not
this the one?
Table. And this here is okay. So if we go back to the first image that it had there, that I put out there, the gentleman in the white shirt, that he is Al Maki. And he is basically the head of humanoids, the U.S. humanoids division of Scheffler in Troy, Michigan. And then also from Monroe is Armin von Sarnowski, who led the podcast. So we had a podcast where we kind of talked about it and went through the breakdown. I don't want to give too much away. We'll talk more about it after it goes out, because I think it was a rather interesting breakdown to have not just Al there, but also a couple of the experts from Monroe going through, kind of looking and examining what was going on as we did this Bot-Topsky. And I learned quite a few new things. And it's really something else. I had the perspective of Monroe and Associates, because they will look at things with a slightly different eye than the rest of us will, because they're thinking about manufacturability, cost. They're trying to go through the whole BOM and get the idea. And obviously, if you're working at Unitree, you want to see this. There's going to be like tremendous value of some of the recommendations are going to be made. But even bigger, if you don't work for Unitree, you are going to learn a lot about this. So if you are building humanoids right now or thinking about it, they will give you a lot of food for thought. So it's pretty interesting. I think it's going to end up being 2 parts, because there was one part in the studio and one part on the table. Now, the green robot you see there is not actually a humanoid. What that is that's a display model that Scheffler brings to trade fairs, and basically is a shelf that they store all their different types of actuators they have. And typically where the actuator might show up somewhere in a humanoid. So they have like an example of a strain wave rotary actuator, and a planetary, and a ball screw linear drive, and a planetary roller screw drive. So they're all kind of there, and you can examine them and get a look at them and get an idea. And this is probably going to be the first of other podcasts that we'll do in the future in cooperations as they get their hands on other humanoids. And they also did a breakdown of the Inspire hand. And that was also rather inspirational to get an idea of how they are doing the actuation, some of the very small actuation strategies that are used for that. So yeah, look out for that. I think on Friday they released the first one where they just put the Unitree bot through its paces when it was still together. And then I think later next week they will have finished the editing and pre-production, and then we can do our own breakdown of the breakdown.
Yes, and we are looking forward to.
The last thing I didn't mention, Royden, is my job title over at RoboStrategy is I'm the Robotics Research Diligence Director, and everyone pause the video right now.
R2D2.
Yes, and figure out exactly what it is. Okay.
But
that was
for us, you're still the bot sensei.
Mm-hmm.
100%.
Which is cooler than R2D2.
Yeah.
We expected R2D3, right?
Yeah.
But Scott, a question: is the company that you are in contact with, is any of them doing some sort of robot benchmarking, in a sense that they actually tear down the robot or several robots, and they do benchmarking of how each of them are when it comes to capability and complexity?
No one yet. So that might be something that Monroe would start looking in the future, because right now they looked a little bit at the capabilities of the bot of just driving around and say, oh, it can do this and that, but they were really interested in what it was made out of and what the cost was. So that's typically what they do, is they tear something down and they look at all the parts that are in there and how much all these things should cost. You get an idea of like, oh, this is what the actual BOM is for this particular part or this particular product, and here's where we believe you can make improvements. So Monroe does not like fasteners. They're notorious for that. So they're always coming up with different strategies being able to put together. So that's like one of the things they would look at is like, okay, how can you reduce costs there? Because not only is that reduce costs, in many cases, it means assembly will be a lot easier. And in some cases, if you design the right kind of fastener, they may not corrode or fail, because a lot of times when you're trying to go to market really quickly, you'll use literally off-the-shelf kind of solutions. because they get you there very quickly, but they're going to be very costly at first. And then you have to start thinking about your second set of designs and how you do that. And I think Monroe is going to be able to sort of articulate that better than anyone else. So they're going to have a fresh new perspective on humanoids in the manufacturing that I think will really be a pretty good series for anyone that is thinking of scaling.
Sounds great. And I have another question actually regarding that Schaeffler demonstration of different actuators in humanoid. I think I saw it in an event recently also. And I was wondering, have they done any study that shows what type of actuator is best for each degrees of freedom? It's kind of a big question in the community now. It's like many people say, oh, linear, best for the lower body. And then,
they may be like the best resource to be able to help but any company coming up to help spec out the actuator from every single standpoint of like, part of it is whether they agree with your own performance specs. So they can go through and decide like, well, you know, you may need like more torque or maybe not so much. And this might be actually the appropriate style actuator for that, so that they can help sort of double check your homework, I guess you could say, on that. And then the other is they can show you which sort of manufacturing strategies would be best. And sometimes that might be dictated by the actual choice of reducer you have. It's like, okay, strain wave versus planetary. Obviously, sometimes you want to pick one or the other if you decide you have to have a QDD strategy, but also it might be, if you're just looking at cost, what is the actual cost going to be in manufacturing, and what's the scalability? So they can go down that whole thing. And the one thing that Schaeffler has made very, very clear, they want to own the content of the humanoids. They don't want to build them. They do not want to be in competition with their customers. Simple as that. Yeah. So it's like they have a lot of expertise there, but in no way are they going to say, hey, guess what? We're going to learn all this stuff and come up with our own humanoid.
All right, let's talk figure and the heads and the cadence of production. And Brett Adcock taking a bow, talking about where they've come from and how far they've come. Scott, you're the guy with all the info.
Yeah, well, okay, head testing, just getting the good nods in there to make sure it's working. Not sure how much we can tell from this, except they're producing lots of heads, and like with everything in the manufacturing, you have to go through some sort of QA process to make sure it's working exactly the way you want. And at the same time, it's probably one way you get the parameters as well. So a lot of times you have to go through and do a calibration. Anyone that's driven a Tesla knows there's a camera calibration you have to go through before everything starts working. And it's probably something very similar here. But I think the interesting post was the one that followed up after this. And that is like, they're basically, and of course, let's show the humanoid hub, because he was the one of many who thought the same thing about the head bobbing there from all this else did. But they're now kind of running out of space.
Yeah. Yes.
Actually, I wanted to comment on that. Why don't you send it to your customers if you have a lot of products?
Yes,
indeed.
Yes.
See, Mehrdad, I can always count on you for these quick, interesting,
and I think part of a lot of it is everyone's really getting ready to do sort of the training before they get ready to send out. So my understanding, actually, they did list in the white paper about a month ago when they were talking about some of the scaling, what they plan on doing it. And the majority of them is going to be doing training, and some of it at figure, because they've set up, I think it's what they call it, the line. I remember the name that they call the third building that they have there, where it's going to be like a gymnasium where they're going to go in and do a lot of training. They're also giving a lot to Brookfield. They'll be doing that, and some internally for their own research, and then also some to select customers. So a small number will be going, and that's understandable. And the other thing is that the amount of scaling they're doing is going to depend upon the time scale of the version 4 bot, which they did the design lock on that one a couple weeks back, and are now getting ready to start building the first ones that they can start doing testing. And maybe that's the one that they want to truly scale up in 2027.
Do you want to make a bet which one comes first, Optimus Gen 3 or Figure 04?
It's going to be close. It's I'll say V4. I will say
Figure 04.
Figure 04 before V3. Just because Elon has, I don't think it's till late fall that it does, just because of this kind of, he's been telegraphing a lot that they really don't want to show it yet. And it's possible Brett's a little competitive, and if he thinks he could get it out before, but again, he will also show it when it's ready. And if he's, but I'm sure, knowing that he's probably got maybe 4 months to be able to do something, and that's possible because Figure 3 was pretty much ready and getting built about this time last year, and then they were starting to do it. So it's possible. It's so, yeah, it's gonna be like a pennant race, right? We're not gonna know. It's gonna be pretty exciting on the World Series, yeah.
This year?
So Mehrdad, okay, are you taking the other side of the bet?
I have. So to be honest, in December, if you remember, I told you that somebody from Tesla told me that Gen 3 is coming early 2026, and it didn't. So I'm no longer commenting on that. I feel like I'm becoming a liar.
Someone told me that from Tesla, and so that was like something you heard, and we were also hearing the same thing externally.
Exactly.
And we were also hearing a lot of other stuff that people claiming that they had already seen it in January.
It's true.
And then it turned out it's like they didn't see anything. What they saw was just the buck. And what they may have seen were some animations of what it was going to look like, and they conflated it and they were confused. And then they publicly came out and just said how wild it is and everything. And then we find out, it's like, oh, okay, it's not ready yet. So yeah, I think there's a good chance that it'll be pretty late. So we already know it won't be till August.
True.
Because that's been the official statement.
Exactly.
So both of you gentlemen still think it's going to be this year? Let's get that out of the way.
Well, that's a good question, because last year I was pretty confident we might see some, around this time last year, I thought we would see something by December. And then it was clear in the fall that we weren't going to see something in December. And then I was already skeptical at that point. Said, we're not going to see anything in the first quarter. And if anything, would be the second quarter. And then we could see as we got deeper in the quarter that even the second quarter was kind of not in the cards, to be able to do that. And now we know the official statement is like late January or late July, August. So when you hear that, it's like they don't know the number. and so maybe September is what they're really shooting for, which is why I'm feeling maybe October.
What about you,
the time
Mehrdad?
for so I think a lot of these releases, there is like some sort of politics behind it rather than the product readiness. So what we saw, for example, with, I think it was Figure and 1X, that they released something together at the same time, or Sunday and another company, I don't remember. So it seems like they're kind of waiting for others' moves. Yeah. And my guess is that if Figure got to realize that, Optimus is going to be released in a few weeks or something, then they will also try to speed up theirs to be able to be competitive, as Scott said. I think.
So let me tell you what I think.
Okay.
I think, and I want to take you back to what Elon has consistently said about his discomfort at releasing embodied AI into the world. And he wasn't talking about cars, but he was talking about humanoid robots, without him being in control. And I point you to the SpaceX IPO and talk about a merger between Tesla and SpaceX. And I get the feeling that we're going to see some real movement only after the merger. I may be wrong, but I'm just going by what Elon has been saying consistently about how he feels about embodied AI. Now, this is not to say that there may not be a reveal of some sort or another demo of some sort, but I'm talking about like the production version. And also then he also has remember what Apple does. It waits for everybody to bring out what they have to, and then puts everything together and brings out a better product. So exactly. I personally think this is going to be a little longer than everybody expects it to be.
Yeah. So if you look at like potential event schedules, there's another 1010 event coming in Giga Texas, but that's being arranged by Tesla's owner club of Silicon Valley. So that's like the normal X takeover. And the tickets are already sold out for that. Maybe there's going to be a little, but it's going to be in Austin at that time. But that's just going to be a normal kind of Tesla owners club kind of thing. That's not officially sponsored by Tesla, though Tesla will probably be there for test drives and a few other things. There's always a possibility something happens in that venue. So in the past, there have been interviews, sometimes live and sometimes, you know, on a screen, where they may talk about and reveal a few things. So I think it was like last year in July, I think Lars was at it, and maybe also Franz, and they talked a little bit about what was coming with Optimus at that point. So maybe, especially the location where it's going to be, there's a teaser that comes out at that point. So it could also be some before. So I would not be surprised if you end up seeing, you know, one of those little teaser videos where you see something. And the question is whether it's titillating as opposed to substantive. So if it's just like kind of walking, doing a little bit of a thing, it's like, well, we've seen enough locomotion. We want to see something that really shows it maybe doing some manipulation. And that could be a great coming attraction. And then you're going to wait and say, okay, they're going to show us something more. The other thing could be whenever the shareholder meeting is, which I don't know if the shareholder meeting is going to be around that same time in October. I mean, that'd be convenient for everyone. Last year, when was it? I think it was it late October, November?
Late October, November it was.
Yeah, it was pretty, so that could be another possible time to do something like that, But again, they usually don't do reveals like that at shareholder meetings. Shareholders meeting is supposed to be about that. So I'm not sure where they would do it, or when they would do it, and what would be something that would be around there. But it wouldn't be till September, because if they're going to do a public unveiling, August is like the worst time to do it, because no one's paying attention. They're all on holiday. You want to do it when everyone is back paying attention to things, and that will be more or less September. And the other thing to remember is that, you know, we have a political campaign going on that really starts after Labor Day. Which means between that until the first Tuesday in November, you know, the airwaves are just covered with something else, and nothing will break through. So that'd be like almost the worst time to be able to do this, because no one's going to be paying attention either. So, you know, it really could be that it's delayed till November, and that gives them a chance to do a real demonstration of the bot. And I'm still holding out hope that they've shut down the SNX line, not to tear it down and replace it, but to be the playground for Optimus, because that's where it would make sense to me. They've already been doing pilot production off-site in other places, you know, in other areas somewhere around Fremont. So it's like they could probably get enough up there for that in the meantime, and just go out there and just to see if you can actually start building cars.
Yeah. Well, there's going to be a twist in the tail for sure.
Yeah, I mean, all they have to do is the body in white. They don't have to like necessarily do the whole thing. If they could get the body in white line up there, so you don't worry about painting it or anything like that. You just keep scrapping, you know, all these things. And then maybe eventually, hey, it's kind of good enough. It's going here. Maybe we'll start painting these things and we'll start dropping everything in there. And then the other possibility is that they've been hinting that there might be a replacement for the SNX. And the thing is that going to be done in Giga Texas, or is that going to be something that's going to be done there on that line? So it could be that there's more than meets the eye. Because again, I know it's like all the pre-production stuff they're showing are in these halls that the ceilings are very low, because you don't need high ceilings. But when you look at an automotive production plant, you know, it's like 2 or 3 stories high for all these things. And it's like, why are you putting that line that does not need that much ceiling space? It just doesn't make sense. So if I was going to be building a line for 1 million Optimi, I would put it in a different hall. I don't think I need an overhead crane. Do you, Mehrdad? I'm just not sure. You're not the one.
Maybe that's where they store them.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Stacked from the ceiling.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Unless you put extra stories in there because you need more floor space. But I don't think they would do that, because that would require a lot of. So who knows? Who knows what they're thinking?
Oof. Cadavers hanging from the ceiling. At the butchery. Okay, let's move on. Boston Dynamics. I found this really interesting. One of the more interesting bits I've seen in the robotics field in the past. If you've ever worked on your feet all day, you know how important a good pair of shoes is. Mechanical design engineer Chastity Kelly shares how we built Atlas functional feet.
Do robots?
Shoes for bots? New
Yes.
idea?
So, well, the idea has been thrown around a lot by Marwa, and that, you know, I kind of believe the same
Shout out to
thing,
Marwa.
that shoes that are meant for people and shoes that are meant for robots are going to be different. They have to be designed that way. And in many cases, we have seen people take off-the-shelf running shoes and put them on the robots and notice that they don't fit very well because the foot design is not exactly the same. The ankle placement is usually more in the middle. Not, you know, Boston Dynamics is exactly in the middle, but even with the Unitree, it's pretty far forward, so it always looks a little bit funny. So, of course, you want to design it to really be optimal for the bot, to be able to handle the weight and everything else is coming down, and also to take whatever advantages that you could of the design to improve the stride. The Boston Dynamics is a little bit different than everyone else because it can turn itself inside out. So I should talk about the fact that the feet don't necessarily have forward-facing toes in a heel. It just depends upon what they want to do. So it needs to be able to walk forwards and backwards equally well. So that means your shoe, you can't take an off-the-shelf shoe unless you're going to take two shoes and cut them in half and glue them together. So it's an interesting challenge. And it shows that whatever is going to be ideal for the Boston Dynamics robot is not going to be ideal for Unitree or Booster or Optimus or Figure or any of them. So they will all need to take a design. But while she talked about shoes, it seems like she was talking more about feet. So she didn't really get into the idea of the soles and exactly the responsiveness that you want to have in there. But she does bring up a good point. It's time we start thinking about robot feet.
What I'm thinking about is that imagine on the ground, there's like a small obstacle. I don't know if a bolt or not is on the ground. And then if the robot has like a solid sole under the feet, then there would be a lot of basically self-balancing and recovery be done only because of that small obstacle on the ground. But if you have a shoe that is more compliant, a bit softer or something that can compensate the form of that obstacle on the ground, it could be a lot of value for basically robots balancing. And in addition to that, it might actually increase the grip and help a lot in that areas.
Absolutely. But let's think about it is like, do robots need shoes? Now we talk about horseshoes, but horses don't really have shoes.
True.
They have something on the bottom that it's nailed on the bottom.
True.
Whereas humans, we have to have shoes that actually fit around. So it really is like the feet need something. They need a sole, but I don't think they need a shoe. And they might need these pads that are easily swappable depending upon.
Based on the
evolution has given humans feet that whose soles adapt.
Well,
you
however,
don't, I mean,
we don't. Yeah. We, you know, horseshoes, you know, you take a nail and boom, 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 you put them on in. You're not going to do that to a human. So that's why we have the top of the shoe, so we can actually have it hold onto our feet. The robotic feet doesn't need an entire shoe. What it just needs is the pad in the bottom, and that's the thing that you want to be interchangeable, depending upon the application.
Isn't it that a shoe for a human is more of a protection of human feet rather than helping capabilities? I mean, of course, it does help capabilities, but it's as a protection.
Partly protection, partly for warmth, but also if it's designed right, it provides comfort. It can also provide a little bit of energy. And we can see that again in the marathoning shoes and stuff like that. They are actually designed to make sure that you have a more efficient stride. So you can incorporate those ideas into a humanoid, but humanoid does not need lace shoes.
I could actually agree with you pretty much. Like, it's not shoe, it's basically sole. And also, to be honest, almost every humanoid I've seen, they've had some sort of rubber sole, right?
Yeah. But
I've
we don't have
seen
horseshoes. That's the point.
Exactly. It's really not efficient. It's also the vibration and shock absorption, right?
Yep.
That is an important factor for actuators, at least. But yeah, maybe what I was expecting.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I mean, it's just I would imagine that shock absorption is one of the primary reasons, because the human foot is designed through evolution to absorb shock in the best manner possible. Also, even today, if you go to the Amazon and you look at tribes there, or in Africa, there are people who've been walking, running, doing everything barefoot, and the soles of their feet are calloused and cracked. But they're calloused because of that's the way the human foot is built to, and they're splayed. The toes are a lot more splayed for balance than ours are.
But remember, for cars, that it used to be in the old days that carriages first were wheels, right? But the wheels would kind of break and wear out, so they put like metal bands around there to protect it from wearing out. But still, it was like, and suddenly say, hey, let's put some rubber on here. And so tires do the same thing. It's shock absorption and grip and a lot of other things. And as Mehrdad says, that it's more compliant when it comes to going, like stepping on a nut or a bolt or something like that on a hard surface. If you've got a hard metal plate, you're going to go on that thing and you're going to slip around. Whereas you have something,
and you're going to ruin the surface over time.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a nice wear surface. That's something that what tires get 40,000 kilometers on them or something like that. Same thing here. It's not like it's going to wear out in the day.
Also, when it's slippery and wet.
Actually, it's a very, very interesting conversation nowadays in the RL policies, that if these rubber pads wear off, then how does it affect the robot's locomotion and the control parts? Because if you put it on a set constraint, then it changes over time. But then if the system needs to adapt itself to this depreciation of the rubber, that would be a very, very interesting study. Although I had one problem with this, that to me, this new Atlas, it shouldn't be able to run properly because it doesn't have toe, right? But what we saw on Figure, for example, I think it was a few months ago, we covered that there was like a passive toe, basically, that was helping it for the run.
Optimus has one too.
On Optimus as well, yeah.
Optimus, exactly. So maybe intentionally for this Atlas, they don't have any thought about it being able to run, but also this shoe seems very, very passive. Not even passive. It's just very solid, that even if they add a capability for it to bend or have just a toe that is a spring loaded, I'm not sure how it could adapt to that.
You would need to have two. You start adding distal mass bunch or other things, but
exactly.
I don't think running is that important.
That is correct, especially given
I think
the
everyone's
application.
over-indexing for running, and that the previous Atlas was able to show us that it was able to move over. All I care is that it's able to go maybe 2.5 meters per second, but that but that's only like in a burst. If it can go 1.5 meters, that's good enough. Remember, their built-in customer Hyundai wants it working in the factory setting, and you're not allowed to run on the factory floor unless there's like a fire drill or tornado warning or something like that. But during normal hours of operation, people are discouraged from running because it's considered a hazard. So everything is done at a pace of like somewhere between 1 to 1.5 meters per second. And that's a normal walk. 2 meters per second is maybe like a brisk walk. So I'm not that concerned. I think that's fine. So if that's over indexing right there already. However, it's showing that it has that flexibility to really be able to go down and lift something up. Because I wish they picked up the fridge on the floor to be able to really show that, because when it was already up there, it's like that's a little bit of a cheat. You want to see it down there. But part of the idea of that flexibility is that they're going to be able to do some of these difficult tasks that do require a little bit. So when we look at it, we have to decide, are they trying to show us cartwheels because they're trying to show off the cartwheels, or the cartwheels are going to have a value? I don't think cartwheels have a value. However, I think that kind of flexibility does have a value.
Yeah, and we're going to see that now in this next video. And let me just play this, bring it up. They're teaching it football. So
I'm a bit
all
confused
your
about the models. Is this the same model as the previous one?
Yes,
Because I see
I
the
believe-
panels and the
believe-
design
really?
is slightly different. Okay.
yeah, or it's a different. I think they have 2 colors.
Oh,
what
okay.
can be confusing.
So what's the value in learning football? Balance,
Yeah, what was the
poise,
point of this?
movement, doing a scissor kick.
You know, since I was a teenager, there has been this robot football cups, right? And then with the small robots usually. And even today, when I watch robot footballs, it hasn't really improved so much. I don't know what is it about robots and footballs that historically we have had it quite a lot, but it's maybe it's a case of robot collaboration, but we don't even see that here.
It could be at the same time. It may be a little bit over indexing for the job that you want it to do.
Right.
Do we really need the robot to be using its feet kicking things on the factory floor? I don't think so. So I think part of it is it's just marketing because,
Exactly.
the World Cup is
Yeah.
coming and stuff like that. They just want to do something. You'll see Booster Robot is kind of doing the same thing. They just want to have a part of the action in a piece of the mind share, I guess. But yeah, it's a very little value for what you really need it to do. Especially if it's not meant to be in the home. If the robot's coming home, I wanted to teach my kids kiddie soccer, right? I wanted to entertain them. That's where the value is. But in a commercial setting like this, maybe not, unless you really think you're going to have a robot football league.
And you need
You
running
never know.
for football.
Then
right?
you need running for that. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
We don't know if it can run, so.
Yeah. Well, that's a great segue. Thank you, Scott, because speaking of football leagues, we've got a fighting league in America, and this is something that you're familiar with that? 6, right?
Yes,
But this
yes.
is a bit odd.
Okay, so full disclosure, Rec is part of the RoboStrategy portfolio, along with Figure. So any mentions that we've done of that, remember this is purely for entertainment and not financial advice.
Not financial advice. Just enjoy the robot's head being blown off.
Yes.
Literally.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if it
There
I
it
think
goes.
it fell off when it fell
Oh
down.
my god.
Yeah.
Not that it got knocked off, because I remember with Rock'em Sock'em Robots, that meant you lost. But here it is, still fighting. Now,
But the camera, right? We don't have a camera.
But I don't think this isn't autonomous fighting. I think everything is still
Right.
kind of controlled by an operator. So while the operator may not be able to see through the robot's eyes, it may still be able to do certain things. So he's basically using his physical presence in the ring to figure out, where do I have to go? Where's my opponent?
And maybe center of mass has changed.
Oh,
Or
that
balancing.
for sure. That for sure. Yeah. Then that was it. Yep.
That was a bit of a collapse.
I mean, to
of
be
the
honest,
Autobot.
I really like this more than if the head was chopped off and the robot was still fighting. That was very creepy.
Yeah. And,
Good
it's
that
literally a
blended.
chicken with its head cut off, right? It's
Yeah.
it loses its head, but it's still running around.
That's freaking. That's gonna give kids
That's
nightmares.
what that tells you is the intelligence is not in the head. The only thing that's in the head is the camera. Maybe there's an IMU or a couple other things to know what's going on.
So
but
why does it
almost
topple
everything
over
is
here
down
now? Is it because it kind of went into the corner and fell over, or because it was fine?
I don't know if it took any blows that resulted in it being damaged or compromised, but either we don't see whether it literally fell on its head or if it fell on the rope and then it got pulled. I don't know.
So it falls flat. The head comes loose there and there here. I think it falls on the rope and then goes boom.
And I think you can clearly say it's not really attached very strong. It doesn't take much to come off, probably because you don't want to have too big an actuator there anyway, just for mass purposes. So
Now,
it's
what
really
bots
just
are these?
able to move it around. This is Engine AI.
Okay, this is not
Engine AI
So-
T800, which I think is maybe
T800,
510 or something like that. So it's
Is it the adult size
size.
or the
It's adult
teenage
size. It's adult size. I think it's around 5'10", maybe 6 feet. I'm not sure. You have to double check that.
and they're both the T800s.
Yes.
Okay.
Now I'm not sure if this is something that Six put on or whether he just saw this video from somewhere else, because I know Rec is very interested in also getting these, because they have their own boxing league which is using Unitrees, but that's just because that's what's available. And as
That's
soon
what
as
I
these
thought,
are available, I'm going to be. And I think they already did a fight between a smaller version of the Engine AI and the Unitree. That happened about a month ago, and they're opening up a store in a storefront in downtown San Francisco.
Nice. But yeah, I think this is from Engine AI themselves, given all the Chinese text around.
Yeah, exactly. So you can see their name around the ring.
Yeah.
Why didn't they give them boxing gloves? Because this is like the hand is fully plastic and
and this is a good question. Now notice that they've gone to great pains to make sure that they have a proper ring around here, and that the public is far from the ring. But you do bring up a good point, is that why not make sure that the hands have something that would not cause so much damage if anything or anyone was hit by it. So it makes you wonder, if you were to have this in a public setting like this is, what are the safeguards and precautions you should be doing, right down to not just having the fencing, but if a hand was to accidentally strike someone, to make sure it's very soft. Any thoughts about that, Royden or Mehrdad?
I don't know. I thought, I think the fun is in the bots getting destroyed.
Well, getting destroyed, but I'm thinking of like other public settings where you may go to some lengths of having a rope to safeguard a robotic performance from the public. And making sure the public is like far enough away from the ropes to.
Doesn't that lead us to our
something like this?
That bot fell through the ropes. There was no one there to get hit. And here we have something where the unfortunate child is actually safely behind where the rope is. He's not up it. He's not leaning in. If anything, he's trying to get away, and he can't get away. And the robot invades his space. And that is not wearing a boxing glove or anything else that's soft. So again, public demonstrations, the safeguards have to be, maybe they need to have 2 layers of defense. One that and like we saw in that boxing one, is the public is not right up against the ring. They are still back a little bit. So there should be 2. And that was the second time, in 2 days, that the same thing happened. Now, in this case, there was no rope, and someone gets kicked. A lot of this, while it should be considered operator error, the people who are operating these bots are putting everyone at risk. They should know to not activate whatever they're doing on the teleoperation control. There's a certain amount, I wouldn't call it autonomy, but there's a couple of policies that they will just run, and it will just do it, kind of automatically. Push a button, kung fu kick, it goes ahead and does it. Just like you do in a video game. You're not actually controlling the whole figure.
That's what I wanted to ask you, Scott. So you're saying this is preset, but teleoperated.
Yes, this is preset, just like in
single
Mario
motions are presets, right? So there are like a few motions, and then they play them after each other based on clicking.
Yes. And you should definitely. Now, while the operator should not have pushed that function or done that or seen the danger and been able to abort it, I still put a lot of blame on Unitree, because they should be having sensors and other things around there that will prevent that from happening in the first place. So while it's very easy to blame the operator for doing that, the operator should not even be able to execute that command when it's unsafe. And so there's definitely a need for that, as well as, making sure that the crowd is back a little bit further. The other thing is that you're going to see some other videos that also came out this week, and others, where more than one case of the robot falling down and flailing and trying to do whatever it can to get back up. And it's just sitting there thrashing away. And then suddenly the operator and another engineer run out, and they try to stop the robot, and they're grabbing the robot to do that while holding the hand controller. I'm like, what's that about? I mean, there should be a switch right on the hand controller. And
Agibot had one of that cases.
There is no e-stop on here. So I don't know why they're going there. It's not, and if there was an e-stop, that's a bad idea, because now you're going to the source of the danger. So there should be 2 things: an e-stop or a dead man's throttle, which everyone knows about. That if something happens, you just release it and everything stops. So there are terrible safeguards on here, which means the liability of this is so high. I do endorse the fact that they should have a ban on these robots in the US right now. not because they're Chinese made or because there's spyware in there. That could be a completely different issue. The fact is, this is an unsafe product. Until this product is safe, they should not be allowed in American stores.
You know, one thing that we know is that the amount of torque that you need to, I don't know, make this robot useful, that amount of torque is very dangerous for human. That is the fundamental problem, right? If you want to be able to carry 5 kilo, for example, with one hand, that 5 kilo generates an amount of torque that can actually harm a human so seriously. And I really agree with the point that Scott said and made me think, couldn't the company actually implement a system that even though it's teleoperated, it can have some sort of let's say like a drive assist on a car, right?
Yeah.
You go full on into another car, but then the brake activates automatically or something to be able to stop it. And those kind of things, we know that, okay, it's not easy. It is still complex. You still need a lot of processing for that. But one of the things that, again, not blaming Chinese companies directly, but just saying the companies who are pushing too fast to go to the market, those are the areas that they ignore, because those are the areas that actually takes time, because you need a lot of testing for that. So therefore, maybe if there is an additional company, basically a third-party company that is taking this mission to create a safeguard even while the robot is teleoperated, that would be something very valuable.
What's interesting is there already is a company out there that is doing that.
Okay, which one?
That's Fort Robotics. They have all sorts of safety systems for that are used by all sorts of companies, not just humanoid companies, but anyone with AI embodiment and also traditional robot arms. They have wireless e-stops and a lot of other safeguards they put in there to make sure these things do not happen. So a lot of what's happening here is not like, oh, we haven't thought. These things have been thought of before. And again, industrial robots have so many different kill switches in them to make sure that when something goes wrong, you can take care of the situation really quickly. The other thing I think is interesting is, like, the same time this happening, Agility announced that I think in the next few weeks, they have reached a level of certification that they can take their physical barriers down where they're doing their tests right now. So they're in like a lot of logistics situations right now where it's kind of roped off. No one's allowed to go in there while the robots are operating. And now they've gone through enough. There's like, we can take them down and people can get closer to them. So there are systems like that, multiple systems. Some of that you can have sensors that almost look like smoke detectors. I know Neura has some, and there's a few other, Algorix also has something like that they can tell when a person is present, and they do it not by, I mean, they really know it's a person because I think they're using, was it like terahertz or some form of radar. They can literally see your pulse. So they could tell if it's, it's a living being versus a statue. So
it's a wave, like human detection sensor.
Yes,
exactly.
Yeah, so it's a human detection sensor. So they know where it is. And because it's not a camera, it's completely anonymous. It's like, you don't know who the person is. You know, hey, there's someone there. He's in the zone. He's in this quadrant. Be careful over in that quadrant. Oh, wait a minute. All these quadrants there, slow down or just completely stop. That can be done with an external system. But the other is that a lot of these could be actually built into the bots themselves. So when they're going around, they would be able to tell that there's a person here and to not do something like that. So the stuff exists. Actually, they're taking shortcuts.
Speaking of agility, Royden, I wish we could also cover the speech that Jonathan Hurst had last week. It was actually very, very good. So many interesting points.
Yes.
It was the TED Talk.
Yeah, it was a TEDx, I think, in Portland.
Right. Especially the part that he was trying to basically say that, it will take like 10 to 15 years for humans to go to homes. Like, he had a lot of these bold claims that became very controversial, but a lot of also good points that why agility digit is designed the way it's designed.
And again, they've looked at it very commercially and tried to consider what the safety systems should be. They worked very closely with all the certification agencies and with NIST to decide what that will be. The other thing I thought was always interesting is that, they tried to solve the problem of bipedalism academically, and that's where Cassie came from. And once they had it, said, okay, what is this thing good for? And they wanted to figure out what is good for, and they did not want to say, well, we'll use the humanoid form as our guide. So they said, we don't want to make it human. And remember, they even intentionally stayed away from that wording for a while. And the more they tried to solve the problem, they realized, oh, it has to have a torso. It actually has to have, and they didn't want to put a head on it because it would look too human. And they realized you really do have, and then they worked at the arms. They tried to work the arms a little bit differently in the second. So what they did is that they took this real first principles approach that said that, we tried to say the humanoid form is not the right form. The optimal form is something else, which is what everyone argues. Only realized it turns out this is actually the best. And that's what I love about what they've done, because everyone else has the more flippant response of like, we live in a world designed by humans for humans. That's why the humanoid form is the best. No one likes that answer. But Jonathan Hurst's answer, it's one of the best.
Exactly. And also, I learned a while back that digits, the name digit, is actually coming from
digitigrade.
Digitigrade, exactly. Yeah. Yes.
That's not coming from fingers, because it never had any when it started out.
Exactly. That's a good point.
Yeah, and we're not digitigrades. What are we?
Right.
We're plantigrades.
Tardigrades.
No, we're plantigrades, which does not mean we eat plants. I think it has something to do with planar. It has something to do with our heel. So a digitigrade walks on its digits. Basically, it means it walks on its toes, whereas we walk on our heels. And
exactly
what we think is digit's knee is actually digit's heel.
Oh, okay.
And that's
heel
what happens
like
with the ostrich and everything else. If you look at pretty much the morphology is there's a similarity in there. It's just that if you take some of the bones and make them longer or shorter, you can turn basically your ankle or your heel into your knee. And if you shorten the femur, then your knee comes up there. And if you look they do have a tiny knee up at the hip.
I wrote an article about this like 2 years ago. I'm trying to find it, but we can link it later.
Yeah,
I
know.
It's a very, very interesting topic.
Forget what was the terminology.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for reminding me. I was like, it was interesting to recall that.
Okay, so let's move on. And this is something interesting that came up, and I wanted to share this with you and get your thoughts. So we had David Hansen posting about Westmag building American robot actuators and drone motors at scale. They've raised some $11 million from A16Z, participation from Founders Fund, Lux Capital, Menlo Ventures. Now, this is something that we've talked about here on the channel in the past. Supply chains for robotics and drones as well, but more particularly robotics. And we've talked about the Trump administration's moves to onshore as much of the supply chain and the vertical stack as possible. Is this the first right step in that direction? Or, I mean, obviously there's so much more work to do, but thoughts?
May I start with a question here? The reason that so far we haven't built really an actuator company in US, has it been a demand issue? It hasn't been technology issue, right? Because all the technology is there. But what was the reason that this didn't happen already? At least we had the drones for many years, right?
Yeah, and so you would think that would have been the driving force, and so there was drones and also more, like the little razors. I forget what those are called. The scooters, and I believe that's what David Hansen was working a lot in that area, and it was just a question of cost. Is that you could buy the same motor for a fraction of the cost. And that's why DJI took over in the US. There were a lot of companies that wanted to build drones. And the supply chain, they just got crushed on that because, setting up the
But then my question is, or follow-up question, what has changed now? Can we lower the cost now or no? Now it's just competitive. So now they're not going to allow Chinese actuators to come to US. Therefore, people are left with this option basically, which will be definitely more expensive than what we have from China. Yeah. But is there any other measure or?
Part of it, I think, is the demand that you have a lot more. Even though we keep on thinking the reason why it's cheaper in China is because that they have so much labor and everything else. Like, it's not so much that it's that they have more expertise and they they've invested in the capital, so they have more of the equipment that already does it. Some of it may have been stuff that they built themselves. A lot of it is stuff that they just bought from European and Japanese companies to be able to do this. So a lot of the automation they have, we could have in the US. It's just that no one wanted to invest the capital. And at some point, if you do it right, you can say it has not anything to do with labor. It really just has to do with the capital investment and setting these things up. And once you get the demand, you can go ahead and do it. And then, of course, there's the other is just making sure to securitize your supply chain. Is that if you have too much dependency, that's not a good thing. Because anything can happen. And there's many geopolitical reasons why something can get shut down. And the best thing is that you're kind of dependent on your own. So I think it's going to be for real. It's not just like one person saying we should do it. There's a lot of movement. Many people that are finding reindustrialization of the US to be not only a priority, but they're really interested. They just want to do it, and I think that's been the problem is that no one really wanted to get their fingernails dirty. Mm-hmm. And now everyone is like, they love the smell of lubricant in the morning.
Interesting analogy.
How do you see American support for this, at least from the Trump administration? Is it sufficient? What more do they need to do?
It's sufficient and it's bipartisan. So I think there was a certain amount of interest also under the Biden administration. It's probably accelerated under Trump. And there's also, because I was in DC a little over a month ago, sitting in a committee hearing about that, and it was very bipartisan. I was just kind of surprised, and it was very clear that both sides want to come up with a national robotic strategy, as well as like a reindustrialization, because they know it's an imperative. So it's nice to know that occasionally we can have a topic in the US where there's like no disagreement.
Indeed. All right. So let's, since we're talking about American bots, I was hoping to save this for later, but I think we found a great segue to it. Mm-hmm. And this is one of my all-time favorite bots. This is the Astrobee on the International Space Station. And it's got a new avatar. It's got these 1, 2, 3, 4, is it? Or just 3 of these, what do you call them, tentacles? No, it's actually 4.
Just 4. So it looks kind of like an octopus.
Yeah.
But I guess it'd be a quadrupus or something like that.
And you said they are dog fans.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
So they've essentially been doing a great job at moving around, and they've got little bits and bobs that you can attach, and it's actually been doing some really useful assistant work for astronauts on the ISS. But so, Scott, I think Mehrdad has been for one of our chats where we've gotten crazy with form factors for humanoids in space, and we've discussed grippers like these in the past. Are we actually seeing them now? Any thoughts on the form factor?
Yeah, it makes sense because you're in 0G. Yeah. So that's actually it's the type of
not drone. 0G, microgravity.
Well, microgravity, yes. So it's technically microgravity, but very, very low G. So that's kind of a drone there, and then it has, I think, some very simple ducted fans for being able to move back and forth. But obviously, the propulsion doesn't have to be very much. It doesn't have to do anything to suspend itself like a normal drone is. So the power consumption is very low. And while this may seem like a really trivial kind of task, it's very important because the resupply missions are very taxing on the astronauts. So they have to go in and unload what basically is like a cargo truck that just came up and move everything around and make sure it doesn't get lost in all the inventory. And if you can automate it, it will take a lot of effort that the crews have to go through and free them up to do other things. So you remember that's a lot of what automation does is it doesn't it doesn't take away people's jobs. It makes them more productive because now they can focus more of the time and energy on the things that they are very uniquely suited for. The astronauts are up there to run all sorts of experiments, but obviously there's a lot of KP duty, you can say, that goes on with being up there that has very little to do with the house, all the housekeeping that has to be done, that takes away from these different scientific experiments they would like to be running.
So now this cuboid, the Astrobee, has ducted fans, which will work inside the ISS, but not outside in space. If you want to deploy this in space, you will need what, Scott?
Well, then you would need normal kind of propulsion systems like you see in any other satellite. And more than likely, you would use something like an ion thruster, because chemical rockets, you really need to get yourself into space and to be able to do a significant orbital transfer. If you're just trying to do very simple maneuvers in space, you don't necessarily, you could do it with like an ion thruster, or a very, very simple, also chemical, sometimes just almost compressed air would be enough to get you around. Now with ion thrusters, you can also change orbit. You can't need a chemical rocket to get through the atmosphere and up into orbit. Once you're there, depending upon how much of a rush you're in, you can either use a chemical rocket to quickly change to a higher orbit, or if you want to spend like a month or something like that, you can have something with very, very low thrust, but very, very high ISP that will be able to do that. And that means you don't have, your propellant fractions don't have to be that high. So since you're already where you want to be, and if it's only supposed to go out and do some work around the ISS, there's a couple of ways of doing it. One, it could just grapple on. So I think there have already been some robotic tests like that where they've had these 7 DOF arms that are basically symmetric at the elbow, and that one side has a gripper that's holding on, and the other side is going out doing whatever it's supposed to, or it walks a bit like a centipede, and then it will then come down and grip on the other and go. And they might have like these special handhold locations that they go into that could also give them power and communication at the same time. So you can move around the outside without needing propulsion, but you might need the propulsion system in case you lose contact, or you slip off, right? Yeah. Or maybe there is something you need to get that's out there. So it might be for like a satellite retrieval or something like that. And in many cases, they're trying to do that.
Wasn't it a spanner or one of the tools that an astronaut lost in space during a spacewalk? And
they've lost a lot of tools. Then they just kind of float away, and then they can't get to it, and then maybe they're tethered and stuff like that, but at some point it's beyond the tether. So it would probably be able to operate in a reasonable zone around the ISS with small propulsive units like an ion. Now, the only reason that you may or may not use ion propulsion will sort of depend upon how much space it takes up and the power requirements and everything else. And sometimes the thing that's nice about chemicals is that they're both the propellant and the fuel source, or the energy source, at the same time. Or depending, sometimes you just don't want to make it overly complex. So rather than doing hypergolics, which people may not want to, literally you could just use compressed air. and that would be enough. Just the little puffs to go you around.
What is interesting about this form factor for me generally is that this is one of those form factors that is built for space, and it might not necessarily work very well on Earth, as opposed to the previous form factors that we usually had. Yeah, true. But the previous form factors were always something that you tested on Earth, and then you use it in the space also. And one of the reasons I can assume is that if you want to test such a system, you need microgravity or zero gravity, right? And you cannot find that easily on the Earth. So therefore, I'm also curious about the process, how they built it. Did they build it natively on the station, or was it built on the ground?
Biomimicry.
Yeah. So the question is like whether the fingers themselves can lift their own weight on Earth. They may not be able to.
Exactly.
A lot of times they will have these low gravity simulators where they just use tethers and everything. They had to do that with the Canadian arm that was built by Spar that was on the space shuttle, because it did not have enough torque to be able to lift itself under Earth gravity. And its speed was like really slow. I mean, it was like a turtle going out there, and it was intentionally slow. So I think it was like, no faster than like 1 or 2 degrees per second on any of the joints. And so that was like one way of doing testing. The others, I know there are some that are trying to build these little robots that are also meant for microgravity, and they're going to take them on like a parabolic flight. But the thing with that is you get at best 30 seconds that you can test it. And then after that 30 seconds, you get more than 1G. You get like 1.5 to 2G because the plane, so the plane goes up, it starts falling, and then as it comes down, it's going to pull itself out. And so basically the average of the entire flight is 1G. So
what did you test on your flight?
You make up for it a little bit later.
What did you test on your flight?
Oh yeah, I tested. I had some lunar gravity. I think there was like 3 parabolas with lunar gravity. I'm not sure they were supposed to do Martian gravity. I'm not sure if they did that. And then we had about another dozen that was 0G, and that was rather interesting. But again, you were just learning to do all the stuff, and then suddenly, the signal goes out. It's like, all right, we're getting ready to pull. And so then you had to brace yourself and get ready. So that you had 5 seconds that you were just kind of wasting to make sure you would be ready for when you do the pull out, and then the pull out, and you needed to be in the right position for that. Then you would come out of it and do it again and again. It was interesting. I found lunar gravity to be much lighter than I expected. So you were able to move a little bit. 0G, it was like completely disorienting. You had no way to kind of keep yourself the way you wanted. Lunar gravity, you could a little bit, but still it was like you had a lot more, let's say, bounce in your step than you were expecting.
Okay. So another reason why I brought this up, Scott, is because we recently had a bit of a scare on the ISS. Of course, the astronauts have been told to chill now. There was a leak in the Russian module, and the astronauts were kind of hunkering down, prepping for an evacuation. Now, that got me thinking, something like this could have just been sent to do an inspection or a repair where you wouldn't want human intervention because it's just too dangerous?
Potentially, depending upon where the repair has to be affected, whether it's on the outside or the inside. I think usually when there's a leak,
well, if there's a leak, you just plug one of these tentacles into the hole and stop it.
You want to repair it on the inside, so you would just you just find it, and they'll just kind of self leak that way. But it could be.
That's rocket science for you folks.
Yeah, but
stick a finger in it.
Yeah, there's 2 ways. Like something penetrates the outer hull, and you get a small hole in there, and pretty much you could just put like chewing gum or something like that to kind of block it. The other is it might be the 2 modules that where the modules are connected. That there's obviously gaskets and other things and that could be starting to get compromised over time. And I'm not sure if that's where the leak is. And their concern was like, oh, we're seeing something that could result in something more catastrophic, a tear or something like that, or something breaking off. When that happens, and suddenly there's rapid depressurization. So that was probably why they wanted everyone to, at least momentarily, go to their spacecraft until they were able to evaluate that. However, that thing would have been very useful going around on the inside to try to identify the source of the leak and deciding whether it was safe to return or not.
Yeah, and it can also carry so many sensors on itself. And I think I'm wondering if it already has a couple of sensor modules.
It must. There's probably like so many ways to detect a leak. I mean, one would just be the sound. Something is hissing. The other is that they're probably noticing that the ISS is got a movement it shouldn't have, because basically that venting is a form of propulsion. Yeah. And not sure how good the software is at that. They might
depending on
we're noticing that there seems to be a force in like this particular area, and they might be able to guess the size of the leak and everything. And then you can go over and start inspecting that. And then the other is like probably acoustic signals. And who knows, there could be, trying to think what else you might potentially have that would tell you. I don't know that you would necessarily be able to under pressure, whether you'd be feeling a breeze, or suction. I mean, the other thing is this, confetti bomb, just do something like that and see where all the confetti is getting pulled towards.
Since we're on the topic of bots coming to the rescue, China's DR-02 humanoid robot carrying firefighting gear now, walking into an emergency response situation with heavy equipment, literally moving into dangerous jobs.
Now, this is what DARPA was all about, the DARPA challenge.
Right.
Yes, right.
It's amazing to see how much they have advanced so far.
Now, what does it take to fit a bot or any regular bot with a backpack that has gear and then just remotely operate it? What is so special about this that can't already be done?
Well, I mean, it can be done by humans, of course, but you're putting them into danger. At the same time, the reason why the DARPA challenge was using a humanoid form is like that was the only way you could get into these danger zones. Either that or like a quadruped seemed to be the only one. So that's why they weren't wheeled or anything else, because you can see you have a lot of obstacles here that you have to climb over. Potentially there could be rubble you need to climb over. And then all the things that they need to go in and operate are designed for hands. Right. Yeah. So a lot of the switches.
Let me rephrase.
Yeah.
This could be done with any teleoperated robot, right?
Yeah. It probably could. The question is always payload. And you notice they put it on as a backpack because we all know it's a lot easier to carry something heavy on a backpack as opposed to any other way. It does throw the center of gravity off, so you have to really think about how you adapt to something like that. I was rather impressed that it was like running there. I don't know if that backpack is full. That's the thing you got to find out when it was running like
plastic forest.
Yeah, it could just be empty plastic bottles. I mean, it's like the same thing. Boston Dynamics lifted up an empty fridge, and it was a mini fridge, which does not have a compressor in it. It's a solid state kind of fridge. And so it's already very light, because they go into college dorms all the time. So a lot of times we will see something and we'll assume it's very heavy. It's hard to say whether that's full. I do remember having like firefighting backpacks like that in our campground. That was about 5 gallons of water that you'd put on the back. And you had like a little spray hose that you could pump like that. And that was pretty heavy. And so it could be a challenge also for a bot to be completely full. But then again, it doesn't necessarily have to be water. It could be firefighting foam, which sometimes is way more effective than water anyway.
Although one thing that I don't see is that if the robot can load and offload the fire extinguishers by its own hands, because this is a complex task, right? I mean, Atlas can, but we don't know if this robot is being able to rotate 180, 360 degrees back. The shoulders.
And the question, does it need to? The assumption is there's going to be people nearby, but of course eventually you would like to have these robots just deployed in these spaces where something could potentially go wrong and just take over without a human having to be nearby. Maybe a human is teleoperating it from a distance, but you don't necessarily want one right there, because the idea is these are very remote situations, or it might be a place that if something goes bad, you really don't want a person nearby.
Yeah, that's the whole idea, isn't it? That you send a bot in to do it. Even if
when there's a fire, there's stuff that's burning that is usually very toxic. So already, if anyone that's nearby has to be aspirating something to make sure that they aren't inhaling whatever that is.
Although sometimes when I see these videos, I'm kind of thinking that, sometimes the companies just want to show an application together with the robots. And this could be some sort of a implication of what this robot could do. It doesn't mean it can do it right away necessarily. If it could, otherwise, what Royden said in the beginning, that any robot could do this, right? Now they may want to say, our robot is specialized to do this, which I don't see very compelling examples of why this robot is more specialized than other robots to do that.
It just already has a backpack set to go and carry that. That's about it. But anyone can do that with a 3D printer. For a second there, I thought that, it looks like engine AI.
True. Isn't it Deep Robotics?
Yeah. So
on Deep, it's also interesting that Deep Robotics, they were best in, kind of very good in quadrupeds, right, for a while. And then they started building a humanoid out of quadrupeds, which basically was a weird looking humanoid which was a quadruped that was standing up, and now maybe this is their more advanced, like actually humanoid. That's
yeah, I guess so. And maybe again, it kind of goes through evolution. Is that we assume that there are dogs that can walk on their hind legs.
Yeah.
But it causes like all kinds of back issues and everything else. They're not efficient. Bears can kind of do it, but bears have been slowly evolving to almost be bipedal, and I think eventually they probably will be. But we had to go through a lot of changes to become bipedal, and I think that's the same thing you're going to be seeing. That if you decide I'm going to have a quadruped which can stand up on his legs, you're going to realize it's just going to be a dog that's able to do simple dog tricks, stand on its rear legs for a little while, but it's just not going to be efficient enough. The center of gravity, everything is just going to be off.
Exactly. And did you notice, Scott, that the hands are Inspire Robotics hands, right?
Yeah, I wasn't sure what the hands were, but there's a good chance that's what it is. Yeah.
In the video that it shows that is working with the electrical box,
yeah,
I think they were.
I couldn't quite tell because it's such low resolution, but it's quite possible.
Maybe in the next few slides.
The Inspire hand has fewer degrees of freedom than like a Sharper or Wuji.
It's basically 6 degrees, I think. Yeah.
Again.
Oh, here.
Yeah, that's probably all you need. You don't need more than that. So don't put something with more dexterity than you need.
Exactly. Yeah, here you can see it's Inspire Robotics.
Yeah. Yep.
But again, so much of just implication of what such a robot could do. Because if you imagine right now, the industry became so competitive, the industry of just building a platform, that is not just enough to showcase a robot's capabilities, right? So you have to put it within a context and saying that, our robot can do this thing very good. Maybe that's what Chinese companies are trying to do. Because again, in the past 2.5 years, we had up to 7 humanoid companies popping up from China. So they have to be able to differentiate themselves. So that's my guess that this is how these guys are trying to differentiate.
And the other thing is everyone is trying to find an application for locomotion.
Exactly.
So they're very good at locomotion. The question is, well, what's the locomotion really good for? Because in the end, we need the manipulation. And they might be saying, well, the manipulation is very simple. The important thing is getting there. And so that's why you need this kind of locomotion, and we can do what you want. So it's not highly dexterous, but it's extremely important manipulation. And you might start seeing more and more applications like that where they say, let's just go for that low-hanging fruit. There's so much simple manipulation that could be of extreme value. And it's kind of good to see that people are carving out, and then it'll allow people to understand why the humanoids will be very important. So again, it's the dull, dirty, and dangerous kind of applications. And, I've seen more of them already, on this trip, that it keeps coming around. And I want to stop framing the whole idea of us losing jobs and that, the robots are doing labor. We need to distinguish between labor and toil. And labor already has a connotation of something that's kind of unpleasant that you just kind of do because you have to earn a living. But toil is like a completely, goes beyond that. It's something that is degrading and is something extremely exhausting, and it's really needed, but it's not something people want to do. And the robots should be doing toil. And so there's lots of examples of toil out there that I'd rather see the robots toiling at that. And again, the combine didn't get rid of labor. It got rid of toil. People out there
Very good point.
with sieves, just like all day under the sun, just trying to bring in the harvest. And suddenly the combine comes along. You have the same thing with the plow. Whoever that guy was that invented the plow put all these people with sticks out of a job, because that's how you plowed before, right? That's how you planted everything. It was extremely labor intensive. And that meant you didn't have time for doing other things. And the thing that people don't realize about farming is that, the harvest is a small part of the year. The combine didn't take away 52 weeks of work It takes away a couple of weeks. As a matter of fact, it accelerates at the point that it makes sure you get the harvest in before like the rains come and the harvest is lost because you couldn't do it fast enough, all those things. So what are the farmers doing the other 50 weeks? Well, I mean, they have a planting season, of course, but then they have winter where they do nothing. And you know what most farmers do?
They have animals.
They have some will have animals that they will feed, but the other thing is if you go to a lot of these farms that you see in Europe and stuff like that, and the houses are just exquisite, and you go in there and you look at the furniture, they're all woodsmen, they're carpenters. That's what they do when they're not a farmer. They do that, and because they would be bored, so they find other stuff to do, and that's going to be the same thing. Is that when the humanoids start taking away the toil, rather than toiling, we now have time to do labor that we like. And it might be that if I don't have to worry about my income or something like that, I might actually enjoy being a maitre d' or a waiter somewhere. I've done it a few times. It's actually fun. But if I have to do it for a living, maybe I don't want to be a waiter all the time. But every now and then it's like, yeah, I'd volunteer to go down. I think it would be fun to kind of do that someplace. So there will be examples of things like that where people will actually enjoy something that we consider, to be
what would you do, Mehrdad?
Yeah.
I would become a bartender.
Yeah.
Part-time. It's pretty cool, actually.
Bravo.
Exactly as Scott said. I was even thinking, actually, I wish there was a bar that during not weekends are crowded, but some days in the week they could just accept volunteers to just do bartending.
You would take it. You would raise it to a level of fine art.
Here's a piece of trivia for you. Do you know what my first job was after I got my PhD? I'm really proud of this.
Yeah. Bartending.
I was a dishwasher at our local vegetarian restaurant.
Nice. As was Jensen Huang.
When I had finished it at the same time, everyone else had kind of graduated. So that meant like all the students that were working there were gone. And then we also was like graduation week.
Yeah.
And the problem with graduation week is like everyone wants to come to dinner. The thing is, all the people that are working at the restaurant are graduating, and they went, it's like, well, suddenly there was a labor shortage. I'm like, yeah, my neighbor ran a restaurant. I'm like, I'll go in there, and that was fun,
Exactly. Yeah.
So
that
those who don't know, so that's why I respect dishwashers and cooks and waiters, because I've actually seen what it's like to put together a meal, and I mean, it's impressive.
All right. In continuation of that theme, but this is not toil. This is a little more complex, and this is the last one on our list today. Toby, Gustav, Mehrdad, you were pretty taken up with this.
Right. So there are two guys from Y Combinator batch, I think Winter 26, who created this company. I think they're both with CS backgrounds, and this is one of those very interesting areas for humanoids that a lot of people are talking about it, but nobody's doing it. Basically, elderly care with humanoids, something that be able to do more like lighter tasks, not so much like heavy manipulation or something, but rather helping the elderly in aging in place. I think that was the word. So when they are at their own facility or at the elderly care's homes. And they are building this kind of specialized robot for that task. As you can see, the architecture is very similar to Sunday Robotics, right? Mainly because it's a very, very optimum architecture for home applications, basically, especially elderly care facilities that are very wheelchair friendly, right? Mm-hmm. Where you can just go everywhere with the wheels. Exactly. And then the wheelbase is basically a perfect form factor. And also, it looks pretty cool, friendly. The training system is Yumi, which is same as Sunday. And then, I think they're targeting a very interesting area. Although we've always talked about also that, homes are messy. Then when you have people around, it could be even crazier. And when those people are elderly, whose expectations are very different from others, I think that would be an interesting case. So I really liked it personally, and I'm working with them, but so I cannot tell too much. But I think,
So it's you're my NDA. Can't talk about it.
But hey,
I love that.
You should get, Mehrdad, you should get them on.
Sure, let's see. We can have them on. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
So,
they'll be interested in.
I think, is one of them Indian or Indian origin?
No, I'm not sure, to be honest. His name is Daniel and Sardur. One of them is from Kazakhstan, I think. But both of them, I think they were born and raised in the US, but their background is foreign.
Okay. So go back to the original image of Toby, because I had sort of the same thought when I saw it, that it definitely reminded me of Memo from Sunday.
Yeah.
So we basically have Toby and not Toby.
Oh my God. You know,
But
a lot of people...
So it says companionship also, Scott. I'm sorry.
A lot of people on X, I saw they were commenting and comparing it with the Toby at The Office.
Yeah.
And they're like, it's a boring Toby, you know, the HR manager at The Office. But
I like the fact that it says companionship, conversation, presence, real social support.
Yeah, absolutely.
That means it's got some sort of a voice, multimodal AI stack in it, shall I say.
I mean, it could be a part of like entertainment for elderly and all those things, probably. Because there is a company actually pretty successful already called Andromeda, right? Australian company who is building this small robots for elderly care centers. And they raised quite a lot recently, and they have been doing elderly care entertainment for a while. So all these areas, I think they could be covered. A big question usually is two big questions. One is basically training this robot or data collection, like how do you want to exactly do that? And the second question is how can you ensure the acceptance from the elderly? Which there has been so many studies on that the elderlies are actually pretty accepting towards robots, but it depends on where the boundary is and what the robot does.
Interesting. Wasn't there a Chinese company that just also, I'm trying to find it in one of the posts I saw, bots for companionship. Did I share it with you guys?
I saw one for elderly that was kind of helping them to get up off the bed and those kind of tasks. But, you know, to me, this is one of those areas that the robot need to be especially made for that task. It's very, very hard, far-fetching for me to see if you take a Unitree and put it in an elderly care facility.
You want to be very careful with elderly people who tend to be very fragile.
Yeah.
And Enchanted already has something like that, which works around the elderly.
True. That's mostly for children, right? But also,
but it's also they've used it like in a lot of elderly situations, and the idea of being very safe and its locomotion, of course, is very interesting because it's like BB-8 or Star Wars, where it's just a big ball that moves around, and it's so it doesn't tip over. But again, you know, would not be able to do stairs or anything like that. But usually in these elderly care situations, the floors are flat. They're designed for wheelchairs and everything else to be able to come in. And everything is very wide. So, yeah, it's an ideal situation.
Yeah. I'm still trying to see if I can find it. Well, if we can't, we'll try and get it next week. But any closing thoughts? We've seen such an explosion, gentlemen, in news around robotics. Where are we headed?
Very big and very deep, everything that is happening in robotics. And the very interesting point, at least at the Humanoid Summit for me, was so many companies who were focusing on data collection, and they were not robotic companies. They were just random companies. For example, I cannot mention too much, but somebody from India, for example, said, oh, I have this facility with so many different workers working on factory floor, and I want to be involved in the data collection. So those kind of movements were interesting for me that nowadays we have them quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, data. You can't build bricks without clay, so
100%.
that's how you. Is that still a nascent sector of the entire humanoid industry, or is it maturing? What's your thought?
I think it's definitely maturing. There are so many missing points on that. One of the things that is definitely missing is that there is no clear requirements from humanoid companies telling the data collection companies or foundational model companies that what these data need to be, what exactly should they be. If you remember the talk we had with Adil Psionic Hand, he said something interesting. He said, like, the data that we need for training a dexterous hand is mostly joint force, right? But what all the data collections are giving you is basically position. So position is nearly useless when it comes to training a specific human hand. So all these things are, I would say, missing points, and the value chain hasn't got shape yet. But the people who can spot these opportunities, like what are the missing pieces and where are the gaps, I think they can make billion-dollar companies for the future. Let's see.
Your thoughts, Scott?
First of all, I don't know what happened why I got kicked out there. I just disappeared. So you might have to.
We were talking about data for training, and Mehrdad met a couple of. Was it a couple or just a company from India that was doing a lot of data?
Okay, so let's say Mehrdad's conclusion of what he was hearing at the Humanoid Summit in Japan is like the same thing I've been hearing in different places from different sources and everything else, like the last summit I was at and everything else, and that everyone is still arguing over what's going to be the best, I don't know if you want to call it foundation model, VLA versus world, and everything comes down to we got to come up
direct
with
video
training. Because
nowadays we have this WAM, right? World action models.
World
like
action
crazy
model,
new stuff.
And everyone has their own world model, but they give it a slightly different name. They're almost sort of the same thing. And every one of it comes down to about the data, how much we can do pre-training versus post-training. And how much touch-up and stuff like that. So everyone agrees the amount of data we need is a problem, and they're hoping to come up with an architecture that's going to make it smaller. And then, of course, they're saying that even if you have a lot of data, it's going to hallucinate, and it's really not going to be doing a good reasoning. So we have to have a good. So there's still basically all these skirmishes going on over that. That no one sort of settled on that. And in the meantime, you have a lot of people saying that we're going to provide the data. So right now, everyone is coming up with these data farms all over. That seems to be the biggest industry right now coming out of it, is like, oh, data. We'll capture all the data for you. And unfortunately, for a lot of startups that are out there, a huge portion of their spend, they're thinking of sending overseas to these data collection farms. And it's kind of shocking. It makes it very hard to figure out, well, what's your moat? What exactly do you have? Because that's concerning. So at GTX, basically the meme was there, the urinal meme where like you get like the 30 urinals and the guy's like way over on the left side, and one guy comes in, he's going to go stand right next to him, and he says, hey, I got a robot data set to sell you. That's exactly what everyone was feeling about that. So it's been going around, and to me, that is like, it's basically a cash incinerator. That until you nail the model a lot of that data will be absolutely useless. So this is why people are arguing over the embodiment. And a lot of the 5-finger argument comes down to, it's the best embodiment. We don't have to do the mapping. If we want to go egocentric, that's the best thing to do, because we don't want people using, we don't want people doing this with their fingers because they have a parallel jaw gripper. And at the same time, we don't want them wearing one. So there's this argument between egocentric and Yumi data and stuff like that that's going around. And no one has settled it. So it's quite the bar fight that has broken out over what's the best way to do it. So I'm not surprised you hear it. I'm a little bit queasy about collecting large amounts of data that may have absolutely no value at 100%. This point, in that until everyone sort of gets
at
it down.
This point, perhaps
you need a certain amount of data to get started and figure out what you're doing. And this is what has sort of happened in the past couple of years, is they've been collecting enough data to understand what they can do with the hardware, what works, what does not work. But that's the dynamic I'm seeing, and I'm leery of some of the ways people are thinking of collecting data, because it's just
but all sorts of data are part of the universal data set ultimately. Look at us as humans, as a species.
Yeah, but annotating them and also categorizing, like it's very, very complex. One of the most promising approaches so far is basically direct video, right? And the reason is the video is already there. So same way as ChatGPT did the training basically on LLMs, mostly they were basically reading all the books that were in the library instead of somebody writing a letter or training them directly. So this seems like a more sustainable way, slightly more, rather than exactly as Scott said, a lot of companies are just trying to collect data for the sake of collecting data, and you don't really know what they want to do with them. And my point was that there is no clear requirement from the robotic or humanoid companies or dexterous hand companies to tell these people how to collect it. Even when we talk about egocentric, for example, the position of the camera really matters, and not all of them are doing it properly, or the lighting might matter, the position of the hand. Depending on what task you're doing, the data collection method changes, but there is no proper system telling how it should be done, because the industry is as confused as everybody else. So it's interesting. One of my concerns is that what if this is one of those I don't know, NFT eras or something?
Yeah, that's kind of what it feels like, is that this is these companies that are going to have 2 or 3 years that they're getting like all this money for collecting the data, and there's nothing long term. So you want to be looking for a company that's going to around 10, 20 years, and I'm not sure the data collection companies are going to necessarily be around that. However, and just to kind of show how the cash burn goes, you can now have a company pay you to clean your apartment in New York City. So yeah. So if you have an apartment in there, they will come in and they'll have cameras and everything else, and a person will go in and they want to capture all that data. So I mean, that kind of shows the absurdity of how it goes. Like, they're literally paying you to go ahead and do it, because the importance of getting the diversity of the training says, and it does make sense, because most data training, this is why I don't like a lot of the data training, is they're contrived situations. They're not actually doing real work. They're pretending to do the real work. So all of this human industry and energy is going into doing something that actually doesn't produce anything. Now, if you're capturing the data of someone actually making a hamburger and serving the hamburger, and that hamburger is being consumed, I'm like, all for it, good, because that person is actually doing something. And in some cases, they're starting to do that where people are doing real work, and they are suiting them up and paying them like an extra $1 an hour or something just to agree to doing something like that. That might be one way, but a lot of these others, they're finding these different applications. And I think I've used this analogy before. Let me know if I have or not. But you have something that requires a certain skill, but the person who's actually going to be training the bot telerobotically or however they're going to do it doesn't actually know how to do that. Because they're supposed to be a skilled teleoperator. And basically it's the person that you pulled off the street, and you give them a little bit of training how to do it. But before they're actually allowed to do whatever operation is, you get them drunk. You put on these goggles that are really foggy, right? You wear them, make them wear these really heavy mittens and a big overcoat, and then you put like some ace bandages around their neck and stuff like that, so it only moves like this. And they say, now do it. I mean, that's effectively what you're doing when you start doing the teleoperation. Is it's so different than actually being there that the quality of the data is just horrible. And the reason why the robots are indecisive and slow and make mistakes is because the teleoperator is having a hard time doing everything fluid. They're not confident. They've got latency issues, all this other stuff that's going on. So how we collect the data is a big challenge. The quality of data is a big challenge. I'm not saying I know the answers right now. I see what all the problems are and how you clean that up. Curation is another area of that, labeling, understanding exactly what's going on. So we'll see. That's one of the big areas, and I'd say that's the third area that people try to use. Like, you get the architecture, you get the hardware that's going on there. How you plan on doing the training? What kind of policies you're going to be using, and then there's the data collection to be. So
I see.
And it's
yeah. Go ahead.
It's one of those crazy part of the industry that the people who does this thing, they're not responsible for the before and after tiers so they don't care. They're like, yeah, this is what we
and the
need
thing
to
is,
do.
they're
Just
selling the same data
like-
set to your competitor too. You know,
Yeah,
it's not necessarily you pay extra to be exclusive,
Absolutely.
hoping it really is exclusive because you have no idea whether they're just like,
there is
oh,
no
you
way
know,
you can track that.
Yeah. So those are the guys that are making the killing right now. And I'm not. So I'm a little bit leery of those kind of companies right now. But like I say, it's the big thing. You go to these conferences and a bunch of guys will hand out their cards saying, "Here, you need data." Yeah. From the trunk of their car, hey, psst, come over here.
And to be honest, on the ethical aspect of it, one of my concerns is that the workers who actually does this job, not all of them get paid.
Yeah.
Maybe majority don't get paid. They're like
Mm-hmm.
the foreman or someone. They're like, just put this camera on.
This is the new Chinese sweatshop.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, but unfortunately, Roy, then it's happening in India mostly.
Yeah, no surprise.
Not in China. It's like I've met, not met, but heard a lot of stories also that.
Well, we've overtaken China with the India's overtaking China with in the population, so you might as well deploy them to do something.
And also the fact that like they just go around and say, hey, we have cheap labor, cheap data, and then we can do everything we want. And
cheaper than
we
China now, right now, actually.
That's crazy. And they say we can tell our laborers anything basically, and they should just apply. So
nobody's going to question
sad.
Yeah, reality. How do you train this?
Oh boy.
Was this? This one. Nice.
I thought this was a great way to end our chat today. Bring on the asteroid already. Kill us all.
Isn't it CCTV camera in the head? It's a nice design.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
It is. So it looks to me like it's more of like whoever built this is trolling us. Because I'm not sure if it can actually walk.
No, it's
I'm not sure if it can do anything
like that. That you think you can walk, but basically it's just designed to be able to do that movement. Its feet are planted in there, and it might
those ankles cannot.
And it's probably like artwork
the bot's ankles.
Someone commissioned. I'm sure. It definitely belongs in the next Star Wars movie.
It's a nice character, though.
Yeah. See, I always say the best for last. Is this where we're going as a species? Come on, I thought we were.
You know, we are in a stage of this industry that's extremely hard for us to predict or expect what comes next. Imagine like next week, if we have our chat again, can you guess right now, within the coming week, what will happen?
Totally
there will be
unpredictable.
like crazy companies who will just surprise us with new things, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, we have no idea. That's why it's exciting.
Exactly, that's why it's exciting. That's why you can bet on it. I don't know, buy stocks and all these things. So maybe it's part of the game, right?
There's always poly markets out there for it as well.
True.
There was a poly market on whether the figure live stream, how long it would go.
Yes,
the robots would go
200 hours is where Brett cut it off at, right?
Yeah, and I think that's where the poly market was. So I'm not sure how it went. If he cut it up, it's like, is it less than or equal to kind of in there, or was it? It's like, wait a minute, it was actually equal to, so nobody won.
If I was Brett, I was making that poly market post myself because I knew when it's gonna end. So
exactly.
Some inside trading going on here.
Speaking of trading, the SpaceX IPO is coming up on the 12th of June. Any thoughts? Bots in space?
Oh, yeah. It's going to be a pretty interesting IPO. Clearly there's going to be bots in space. That's going to be there always have been robots in space. They call them robotic space probes and rovers and stuff like that. But now if there's a real serious push to building data centers in space, we're going to need raw materials. Raw materials are probably going to come from the moon. We're going to need a moon base. We might also need to be mining near Earth asteroids. So the idea of mining an asteroid is kind of crazy when you think about the distances. Like we sent a probe to Psyche that's going to take, what, 5 years or more to get there. And if it was to come back, it would take sort of equal amount of time. And if we were going to seriously go out there, we're talking about decades before you can do it. So the return on investment of mining an asteroid is really crazy until you realize that you don't have to go to the asteroid belt. There's actually some near-Earth asteroids that come by every now and then. The thing is, they're not metallic, so they don't have the...
You can always grip them with an astrobe.
They don't have the rare earths that you need, but what they do is they have a lot of volatiles. So what we actually need right now is gas stations in space. We don't necessarily need the material. We can get, I think, most of the material that we need on the moon. There might be a couple of special, like the moon is carbon, is not carbon rich. There's almost no carbon there, but I think there's like aluminum, silica. I'm not sure whether, does basalt have iron in it?
It's rather strange, isn't it? Considering the theory that the moon was part of Earth.
Yeah, but the thing about mining asteroids is that material is of more value in space than it is on Earth. By the time you bring it onto Earth, it just is way too costly, and the time to do it is a lot. But if you're able to capture, maybe if there's a near Earth asteroid that's actually made out of iron instead of some exotic thing, that's clearly like of no value on Earth. I mean, what's the point of going to the effort for that? But boy, that's going to be really valuable up in space for building a lot of structures, or aluminum. And it might be that it's really aluminum we want to start working with, because, even though you're not fighting, well, you're fighting gravity a little bit, you're also fighting a little bit of inertia and mass. So it'd be a lot easier to move like an equivalent volume of aluminum for a lot less delta V. And I think you have a lot in the moon, because I think sand is like, isn't that really aluminum? It's like aluminum silicate. So we do have a lot of it out there. So that's the one thing I sort of see coming. And speaking of asteroids, when I was in Boston last week, we had a bolide actually flowed over Boston. And my understanding is that there may have been a couple pieces that made it into Cape Cod Bay. So at first they thought none of it made it down there, and then NASA upped it from a 3 foot to, I think, a 5 foot, and from 100 tons to like 250 tons. So it was about 25% of Hiroshima, something like that. Wow. And it definitely caused shock waves and a sonic boom, and I think 2.5 on the Richter scale or something like that, at least I was measured. And some of my friends' dogs, started yelping and everything else, and it happened.
Well, when I was in
Did they
Japan,
find Superman?
Yeah.
So my flight got delayed for 24 hours. I came one day after because there was a typhoon. Sorry. Yeah. Typhoon in the ocean close to the US, which was coming towards Japan. That's why everything got canceled. So maybe it was a...
Is that the normal time of year?
Look, Mehrdad, you just didn't want to leave Japan. Just admit it.
That's true. Good excuse.
This is monsoon season, right?
Yeah. Not yet.
Are the monsoons tied to the typhoons?
I
always think of typhoons like hurricanes being more of a fall type of thing.
Right. True.
So that's a bit odd that the typhoon, but obviously, it's the northern hemisphere, so I think it's still the same.
Yeah.
So you have monsoons for sure, but maybe a monsoon can turn itself into a typhoon.
I thought it rains later in Japan. July, August.
June.
I may be wrong.
I spent the summer in Japan, and in June the baseball rules are different, because there's no rainouts in June, because if you did, there would be no games. So and things get warm. So it's rather interesting. I watched that. Wait a minute, the Japanese baseball is a little bit weird here, and then I was like told what the rules are. It's like, the monsoon season, it's a little different.
Interesting.
All right. I think we'll call it quits for now. Thank you. We've crossed the 2-hour mark again. Bravo.
Oh, amazing. 2 hours and 50. That's probably why I got kicked out.
We started off with good intentions.
Yeah.
Time flies in great company. Thank you, gentlemen.
Mehrdad,
Scott, and Gustav, who was with us earlier. I hope everything's going well with the doctor. Yeah. Till next time, gentlemen. Till next time.
Thank you very much. It was amazing.
Yeah, bye now.
Take care.